Hi, virtual students. We're on Unit 5, Part 4. You'll see we're going to fill out these columns together. You should hopefully see how it goes as we move forward. What we're talking about today is things the government can do to fix the challenges of the statistics that we've already learned about. So we've talked about the government spending, and then we've talked about those stats: GDP, inflation, unemployment. We're going to talk about how the government can try to fix those or stabilize those in bad situations. Go ahead, come up with an answer. All right. I don't know if you'll have any answer to this. Obviously, in a situation, we're asking you to identify what is the most dangerous. Complete opinion question. What if we had high inflation? How do we fix high inflation? What is something that we can try to fix it? We're going to talk about some things the government can do today, which is pretty simple that they can do. Okay. So way back when, I think it was in Unit 1, we talked about how money flows through an economy. We said people buy things from businesses, businesses hire people to do stuff, people create businesses, and money flows this way. We also knew that the government, okay, spends money on people, spends money on businesses, as well as collect taxes from businesses and people. So they affect how much money we spend at businesses, right? They affect the flow of money. Okay. We're gonna add this fourth institution here, alrighty, from banks and other, well, we're just going to refer to them as banks, okay, where people save money in there, and then banks make loans to people, right? And banks make loans to businesses, and based on how much savings they have in their safe, they have to, determine an interest rate, a price of how much money we are willing to pay, right, to borrow that money. And if the price is low, we're going to borrow more money. We'll be able to, you know, increase our capital, build buildings as a business, whatever, right? Buy houses as consumers, whatever that might be. And we know the federal government borrows money as well. Okay. Quick reminder that unemployment and inflation, unemployment's blue, inflation's red, act, right? They kind of interweave with each other. And when unemployment goes up, prices tend to go down. It's not perfect, right? But we can see that there is a correlation there. Make sure you write this down somewhere in your notes on how these are related to each other. Okay, so notice on your chart here, okay, you've got those two columns. So obviously for the fiscal policy, we're on the left. Notice how the notes are set up. We've got this first row right here, right? And then I wrote the question up at the top. What's the difference between monetary and fiscal policy, right? So I'm going to give you the definition here. Okay, so fiscal policy, and this is what you need to remember. Fiscal policy is going to be the federal government, okay? And the federal government can affect what we just looked at, how much money you have in your pockets, in only two ways. They can either spend, right? They can create a government program that spends money on people, or they can tax us. And obviously, taxing is going to take money out. Spending is going to put money into our pockets. If we have more money in our pockets, we're going to spend it. Obviously, that's the only things that they can do. And we'll talk about what they do when we get to that point. Keep in mind, we're talking about the president and Congress, okay? So these are the federal government people that are making fiscal policy decisions. Monetary policy is controlled by a different group of people. They're controlled by what's referred to as the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, will go into a little bit more detail in the next part, but basically they monitor banks and they do certain things that make banks raise or lower interest rates. Okay, and we kind of mentioned raising interest rates makes people borrow less money, which means I can't buy as much stuff. Lowering does the opposite. But that is they are going to control the availability and cost of credit. Okay, credit's just another fancy way of saying loans. So those are the difference. Two different groups of people, two different types of policies. We'll talk about the positives and negatives as we go. Okay, so how are things going to be fixed if we have a high inflation problem? Okay, so how do we fix inflation? Well, we've talked, the federal government can only do two things: spend and tax. Okay, so what's going to make inflation go down? Well, a decreased demand is going to make inflation go down. All right. And so they want to do things that they take money out of circulation. Remember, they've only got two things they can do. So how do they take money out of circulation? They raise taxes, right? Take money out of our pockets, or we stop government spending. And that can come from a whole bunch of different ways. They can stop spending on any of those programs we've talked about in the past. But that's the only way they're going to take money out of people's pockets. Positive is inflation goes down. Keep in mind we have a trade-off though, right? We looked at that graph. When inflation goes down, right, we tend to have unemployment. You take money out of people's pockets, they're going to stop going out to eat. That might affect a waiter or waitress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Down the line, trickle through the economy. It becomes a challenging decision to make. Now, tight money policy is going to do the same thing. They want people to borrow less money when they get in these situations. It makes borrowing expensive. How do they do that? They raise interest rates. The only thing monetary policy can do is affect interest rates to affect people borrowing money. Okay, so to borrow less, they raise interest rates. Same positive, same negative, okay, as across. So you're starting to see how your notes are kind of set up. Same positives, same negatives. They're trying to fix the same thing. Okay, let's flip the situation. Now we have unemployment or GDP that is struggling. We want to fix. Okay, so how can we do that? Well, we're going to put money into the economy. We're going to inject money in. Okay, so we're going to put money in people's pockets. Well, how can they do that? Well, they're going to flip what they're allowed to do. They're going to lower taxes or they're going to increase government spending. Okay, they're going to spend money on other things. Stimulus bills do this, right? The economy is going to struggle. Hey, let's put a stimulus out there. It's just a fancy way of saying we're going to inject money into the economy. Like we said, we lower taxes, we increase government spending. If you're remembering what we talked about in the last part, obviously that's going to deal with the debt the government has to deal with, right? The positives flip from the situation above, right? Lowers unemployment, GDP goes up. However, inflation tends to increase also. All right, monetary policies, the interest rates, right? The banks. So what do? They lower interest rates. People are able to borrow more money. They're going to use that money. They're going to spend it. We see unemployment go down. We see inflation increase. Same positives, same negatives. You can see here during these recessions, okay, again, that's a time that we're going to fix unemployment, right? So during these recessions, right, the first thing the bank does, this green is what is referred to as the federal funds rate. We'll define that in the next part. Basically, it has to do with an interest rate. The first thing they do is lower that interest rate, right? They lower the interest rate in these recessions. They lower the interest rate in these recessions, right? That's the first thing that they do to try to stimulate some type of borrowing so people are able to borrow more money. Go ahead and share your opinion there. Hopefully you have. And again, there's positives and negatives to both. So the fiscal policy, we're down at the bottom of your page. Fiscal policy is I can do it right now. Okay, I can vote in Congress, I can pass a law, I can pass a bill, and we can do it right now. The disadvantage is politicians don't like to implement unpopular policies, right? So if I say, hey, the economy is going too well right now, inflation is going to be a problem, let's decrease spending or let's increase taxes, that's not popular. Okay, so politicians don't probably want to do that too often. Monetary policy, we don't elect those people, okay? And we'll talk about them here in a second. Those people are appointed by the president. They can't be elected out of office. The disadvantage is it takes some time for us to be able to get a loan, spend that loan, and for it to trickle the economy. Okay, so it takes it's a little bit slower going with the monetary policy than it is the fiscal policy. Okay, that's what I've got for you today. We'll talk again.